Hello and welcome. You are watching QTV and you are watching the Week in Review, which is our weekly trawl through 10 of the big stories from the week just gone by. And here, as usual, to go through them with me is my friend and colleague, Mr. Mamodu Mboj. Mr. Mboj, as always, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Ade, as always.
And as I always say at this point, so bear with me, if you're a long-time listener and viewer, there might be some who are joining us for the first time. It's a simple one. We take 10 big stories from the week, we go through them, and some we give a bit more attention than others, but nonetheless we always try and expand and discuss them. So, first one, elections, campaigning is over, the election is over, and then after the election what happens? Well, if you win, you then have to choose your cabinet, and that is the conundrum, or is it, that's now facing His Excellency the President. Have a look.
President Adama Barrow's first term ended, and this is the beginning of another one, having secured a landslide victory in the December 2021 presidential elections, a reflection of the people's trust and confidence in his administration. Behind the wheels of his machinery for development are the cabinet ministers who collectively direct government policies and programs and make decisions about national matters.
I will not do justice to you if I do not publicly declare my appreciation and gratitude for your laudable efforts and the commendable commitment you demonstrated during my first term.
Excellency, the President there, Mr. Mboj, talking about their laudable efforts, etc., etc. At first we were told it was a caretaker cabinet, and then there was a correction issued that it was a transition. So, surprises or no surprises?
Yeah. Well, how does one digest this one? Remember, everybody, we were all sort of avid to see the new cabinet.
Indeed.
Because we thought that with the landslide victory, obviously, the legitimacy, so now he would be bold enough, as it were, to do certain things, but in the end, what was it, a damp squib? Then we move on. Then why? Is it that he's satisfied? I mean, as he was talking there, he was praising them in very glowing terms. Is he satisfied with that? Is he waiting to catch his breath after this win? Let me take my time and see what happens. But I was talking to somebody the other day, and the person said, oh, come on, it's a coalition. Drag it until after the National Assembly elections.
Well, this is, and to be honest, that has been the conversation that I've been having with people, and they're saying that, well, he's called it a transition, so that people have it in their minds, fixed in their minds, that it is a transitional one, and then of course after the National Assembly elections, certain people might, win or lose, or he can test the waters as to how the public has reacted to his party in the election, because of course this is the first time his NPP has contested the presidential election. And they've won a landslide. Can they repeat that in the National Assembly elections? And if they do, what signals then does he then rejig his cabinet accordingly? And that's what people seem to be saying. Others are saying, well, no, don't be so cynical. He's thankful, as he says, thank them for their laudable efforts and so on. But transitional means it's a temporary thing. It's not meant to be permanent. And of course, if we then see appointments immediately after the National Assembly, everybody will be nodding and saying, yes, we were right. But this is politics, isn't it, Mr. Mboj? You have to sometimes, gauge which way the wind is blowing before you make big decisions. And appointing ministers is a huge decision.
Of course, he had to come with a coalition. He had a coalition, so you've got different interests. You have to balance out different interests. Sure. And why upset it right now? You're just going to have the National Assembly elections, and you know that we all know that he would want to have the most,
of course,
the most members in there. So they'll want to dominate that. Sure. So this is so why? Why upset anything? It might eat into that. Why upset the apple cart? So it might eat into that. So to my mind, perhaps this is really the calculation. Sure. But again, if you're going to tell me that you're really satisfied with what's going on. But we know that a lot of things need to be done. We are seeing improvements in some sectors,
Sure.
but not others.
Indeed.
Then I will begin to question your own judgment or your own diagnostics of what is going on.
Sure.
I hope that you haven't overinflated your achievements and you can still see the challenges in there. So either way, we will make our judgments. One will say we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the immediate sort of aftermath of his first inauguration, and certainly when I came here, not immediately after he got inaugurated, but there were weekly sort of briefings. Initially, it involved all the ministries, and then because of COVID, all the ministries reported to the Minister of Information, and then he disseminated what was happening, and then that was stopped, even though it was virtual. And we enjoyed it because, you know, we got a feedback and a sense of how they were performing. We didn't get a chance to question them because, you know, it was just one minister responding on behalf of. But would you like to see something like that, where we kind of can mark their report card on a regular basis, be it weekly or monthly, and question specific ministers, because things arise anyway, you know, in the course of a week or a month, that you need to put to them. And of course, as I've learned to my sort of peril, it's no use writing to them because they don't respond. But, you know, directly facing them, would you like to see something like that reintroduced?
It should be a convention, you know, a bit like, not quite like PMQs.
Yeah, quite.
You know, there's no law that states that, but it should be a convention. And you also want to restore some kind of trust.
Yes, yes.
You know what I mean? If nothing else, we know that most of what they tell us, we have to go and investigate more. You know what I mean? They just give us outlines,
Yes.
and the rest of the work we have to do. But yet, how people will perceive it.
Yes, yeah.
You're taking the effort to come and talk to people as it were regularly. This is we would have liked that to continue. But you know again how we are like, isn't it? We are so good at starting things. You see, we are always complaining about the sustainability of things.
And it happens in every sphere.
It happens in every sphere. So you just have the same character trait, as it were, playing out in all these different areas.
It's a shame. I mean, and just in closing that, as we have 9 more stories to go, they started something similar in Sierra Leone under President Koroma, but after 6 months it was abandoned. Same thing, ministers came, they faced the public, and because they were getting asked difficult questions by journalists, it was stopped. And the new president, he's nearly 3 years into Madabio, has not carried it on. So it's a shame. Sustainability and, you know, accountability is what's needed. Thank you for that. Now on to something which has been, there have been a few subjects that have been very, very widely talked about in the Gambia this week. AFCON has been one of them, and so has this one. But this has more to do with what's happening in the Casamance region, in Gambia, Senegal, than with anything else. And this week, things have escalated somewhat. Have a look.
8 Senegalese soldiers have gone missing on Monday after a clash with Casamance rebels in the border area with Gambia. The Senegalese army says the missing soldiers are likely held hostage by the MFDC rebels in Casamance. We visited the Fonyi Kansala region to gain first-hand knowledge of the situation. In Bujinga, we found more than 200 internally displaced people, mainly women, children, and the elderly. A village elder, Mustafa Bojang, says they are doing all they can to support the displaced people and call on the government to help solve the problem.
The Senegalese soldiers occupying our region should leave. I don't have much to say other than to call on the Gambia government to evacuate the Senegalese from our area. They brought us no good except fear and stress.
The displaced people are being cared for by
Mr. Mboj, the displaced people are complete his sentence, are being cared for by the Red Cross. Mr. Mboj, this one, as I said, is something that's been rumbling on since 1982, to my knowledge. But this has taken another turn. 2 Senegalese soldiers killed. And of course, Gambia is very actively, what people didn't see in that extended report, it was a 7-minute report by Babukar Sy. There are roadblocks on Gambian soil by the separatists. They don't want to be called rebels. I mind my words. But as I said, this really has, it had been quiet. And I just say this very quickly before you respond. Somebody asked me just 2 weeks ago, or said to me, things are very quiet in Casamance, aren't they? I wonder why. And all of a sudden we get this.
Of course, sort of this low intensity. It has been a low intensity fight, so that's why every once in a while you get these flare-ups.
That's right. There's a lull and then flare-up.
There's a flare-up. So, but as far as I'm aware, I can't remember the time when you had the
separatists.
The separatists erecting roadblocks on Gambian soil. I really can't remember what this.
And they've occupied a school, 3 villages. Everyone has fled because the gunfire was heavy, and we can attest to that because somebody called us there saying, "Oh, we want QTV to come and cover this." And whilst we were on the phone, we could hear very heavy gunfire in the background. And in fact, he said, "Look, I'll have to stop talking to you because I have to run now." So that's it's completely different. It's sort of ramping up of the thing. But at the root of it is we heard about illegal logging. But what was interesting, not just from the people we heard there, others keep talking about we want these Senegalese soldiers off our soil because there's been a lot of talk about sovereignty, even from our colleagues in the office. But it's about more than that, surely.
Yes, these 2 pillars, as it were, the logging recently, really, we've all seen the BBC documentary. You know, how involved Gambia is in that.
Yeah, quite.
That's one element. I think that's one of the reasons why we seem to be being sucked in.
Because without Gambia's involvement, it's dead.
Absolutely.
It can't happen.
Yes.
So let's be blunt about that. Yeah.
But the second bit really, that's the one you talked about there. The Senegalese soldiers posted in Fonyi. You know, we interviewed, like we spoke to during the drive time that we talked to Amul Nyasi, who is the Member of Parliament for Fonyi Councillor, right there. So this is it. You know what's going on. We've got this border with Casamance. You know what's going on between Casamance and Senegal. You're sending the soldiers there.
Right.
So it will seem like we are colluding in it. So whenever anything happens between them, so perhaps we'd be sucked into it.
Yeah.
I mean, his argument was that why not take the Ghanaians there?
Yes, and that was the discussion literally minutes before I came in here. That was the discussion I was having with colleagues in the office. They were saying, you know, send any other troops, but not the Senegalese. Because essentially the Casamance fight is between the separatists and Senegal.
But this is it. So now we put in the political calculation. I mean, Senegal, for instance, would love that. They've got their soldiers there, right there, from another angle. And we are told that operations are continuing to find the missing soldiers to secure the area. Now, if they were to come to Gambia and ask Gambia certain favors, what would we say? Even though our spokesperson, Ibrahim Sankara, said that we wouldn't allow Gambia to be a launch pad for whatever. I said, but sometimes these threats, this belief depends on your power, your bargaining power.
Well, you know, if you've got separatists, I almost said the R word again, I'll have to get used to it. But if you have separatists setting up 2 roadblocks on Gambian soil, and Gambia is not doing anything about it, we can bluster all we like. This is the reality, you know. So, you know, let's just kind of get down to brass tacks. These things are happening, and, you know, we might not allow our soil to be used as a launch pad for this, that, or the other, but we're allowing people to set up roadblocks on our soil, and we're not doing anything about it.
Absolutely. What can we do right now? I think we rely a lot on the economic. So this one will test our president. He has set up a task force.
That's right, yes.
That's it. Then we'll see what happens. But there must be an overall strategy.
Sure.
When I spoke to Amonyasi, he said we should be neutral.
Yes,
try to be mediators. But we all know the political, what would be the political consequences of it?
Of
you know what I mean? You're almost entirely surrounded by Senegal and all this power. So what would be the price to pay? What should we do? And normally in these things, yes, they're calling themselves separatists, but still the legitimate government, the whole of Senegal is still in Dakar.
Indeed.
Usually with these things, from government to government, you support the legitimate government there. So
and
this
that's the
neutrality, how would it play out?
Exactly.
I really do not know how this neutrality
exactly.
in the world of politics.
Yes, indeed. And you know, the kind of recognition of the legitimate government is exactly the ECOWAS position on this. They certainly don't recognize the separatists of Casamance, or even that they have a case.
That's it.
And they said, no, you are part of Senegal, end of story.
That's it. So, but now, you have some analysts saying that, but really, what they call the Casamance issue, problem, conflict, one of the forgotten conflicts.
Yes.
Is it that Senegal is so powerful that ECOWAS will be careful what to say?
Sure.
that sort of thing.
Yes.
But some analysts are saying that maybe you need a region-wide solution for Senegal.
Sure.
For the Casamance area. Yes.
For Casamance, and I agree with you on that. And just in closing, about it being forgotten, I contacted the BBC and said, we've got somebody in there, do you want a story? And they said, what's happening in Casamance?
Absolutely.
BBC.
BBC.
So, yeah, there you go. It is the forgotten crisis and the forgotten conflict, if you want to go. Thank you for that. Yeah. So yeah. Now on to our third story. Something quite different. Investigation has been launched into matters at the Kanifing Municipal Council, KMC, and they had not been happy about it, and so they went to court. Well, they went to court. What happened? Here's what happened, or part of what happened. Have a look.
The High Court of the Gambia, presided over by Justice Basiru VP Mahoney, has delivered its ruling on an application for an injunction that would have restrained the Commission of Inquiry from proceeding pending the court's judgment on the main suit, which alleges that due process of law was not followed in establishing the commission. The applicant in this case is the Kanifing Municipal Council, and the first respondent, the Minister of Lands and Local Government. Relying on common law judicial precedents and recent judgments by the Supreme Court of the Gambia, this court admits that it has no power to exercise a restraining order against the established Commission of Inquiry, which was established and gazetted by the Lands and
I smile. I used to make jokes about people going into the legal profession here and saying there's nothing for you to do, find another job. But it seems as if lawyers are getting lots of work these days based on a lot of these cases. They're going to the High Court or the Supreme Court. In this case, it's the High Court. And the court said categorically, we do not have the remit to hear this or even comply with what you're seeking. But there's a wider thing to this, isn't it? We've discussed this on another program about why doesn't the KMC let the investigation go ahead?
Everybody's been saying that. So perhaps, well, for me, the best gloss I could put on it is that, well, there's a principle that we try to defend.
Well, indeed, and I agree. And those who didn't hear us have this discussion on another program, we can go over it again because they are saying it is on a point of principle, and we're taking a point of principle. Yes, this time it affects us, but the next time it could affect somebody else. They could decide to invest another council, and they could set up a commission of inquiry or an investigation committee which is set up illegally. We are challenging it on that basis. Yes, in this instance for our own case, because we are the ones affected, but if we win, everybody benefits. And essentially that is the point of principle.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is what we should be doing now, because we are really trying to recharge our way.
Sure.
We all know the mess, the institutional mess all over the place. Perhaps some people will tell you that, I mean, these people in positions, really, I'm not sure what to do.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we've seen even the civil society organizations, how they've tested a few things and in court. So it seems as part of our transition,
sure,
the reforms, we will probably have to go through this a lot so that we can regain our balance on the going on the right track, as it were. We've been off track for a long time.
That's right.
We don't know what the proper track looks like anymore. So we need to go and test it in the court.
This is it. I mean, you talk about regaining balance, but also what was revealed from this was kind of gaining our independence as well. The judge was quite specific that you have come to this court quoting pre-colonial or colonial laws, colonial era laws, and saying it's not for me to say they're wrong or right, but perhaps they need revisiting. And that is something, and again I commented on this, saying that, you know, there ought to have been, certainly either at independence or at the time 5 years later when we became a republic, we should have looked at all the colonial laws or set up a committee to review them and expunge or repeal all of them and replace them, even if you replace them with something similar, but at least go through the process. But it appears that has not been done, and they are still in place.
I've got here Mahoney's quote.
Yes, please.
Just to make a certain point.
Yes.
He said the State Proceedings Act, which they relied on, as it were, ought to be revisited as an injunction and may be granted against the state in many other jurisdictions.
That's right.
Which, if it were not available, would have resulted in great material loss or breach of fundamental human rights. So it's almost as if, look, this is the law.
Yeah, quite.
I have no right, but possibly if I had the power, maybe I would have
made a difference.
It would have made a difference. I think that was really what he was saying.
And that's
it
exactly
would have made a difference. So the state, or Ministry of Lands,
that's right.
You know, be careful there.
And so I'll be honest about this and to the viewership. The reason I chose this was exactly for that reason. That statement by Mahoney is saying that we need to revisit this. It's not about KMC and so on and us discussing that. That's been discussed and kicked around, and there's still another case ongoing anyway. But essentially, it's about us revisiting because, as Mahoney rightly says, had this not been there, I might have come to a different ruling.
Absolutely.
And that is a wake-up call for us to go back and look at all of these and revisit them. I just happened, I saw some people that actually printed copies of it and they were lying around the office. I don't know who it was, but obviously somebody wanted to read it. And so, yeah.
That's it. And for me, I have to say this, Ade, I just don't get it. One would have thought that our priorities, the first things that we did after independence, was to dismantle, as it were, all that machinery, the architecture. That's really the legal stuff. To dismantle it, because we wanted to move away from colonialism. It's just very, very odd. In fact, we had not realized that we had become what we want to run away from.
This is true.
It's extraordinary.
That's right. And if you remember, just a couple of 3 programs back, we were discussing repeals of some of these laws where people talk about vagabonds and rascals and so on. And so they're still lingering. But yes, you're right. I mean, anyone would imagine that at some point, immediately after independence, this would have been one of the first things. Throw out all the stuff that was kind of encumbered or sort of dumped on us by the colonizers, and let's do our own thing.
Set up a special committee. It might take us 10 years. It might take 15 years, because I imagine that it will be a complex thing to do.
Work, yes.
Absolutely. But then when you prioritize it, one can do it in many ways, really.
And so, you know, we hope those in the authority and the power to do so are listening, because it needs to be done. And this case is one of many that has shown us that this needs to be done. And it's quite ironic that this came just a matter of months, or a couple of months after they talked about all these ones that needed to be looked at, and they were now redundant and needed to be kicked out. So how ironic.
It's all of a piece with that.
Yes,
so that's really what the situation is like.
Totally,
so
totally. So we wait and see, and we'll keep an eagle eye on this, see what happens. Now on to another matter. Again, Mr. Mboja and I, both on this program and other programs, have talked about select committees holding people to account. Recently, staff members of the GT board had made certain allegations about things they were not happy about. And one of the committees, standing committee, decided to have a look and question some people. Have a look.
Would operate its business in the shopping center which has other facilities to recoup its investment within 30 years and hand it back to government at the end of that period. The lease would increase to 35 years because of the construction of the underground parking, adding to the expenditure by Construct Limited due to possible future expansion of the Bertil-Harding Highway. The project continued until in 2017 when a new government came to power. According to testimonies from Farah Shams and Abdullah Haidara, former GT board director, in 2018,
this is something which it's not a court case that's being reviewed or looked at. The petition from GT board staff members was quite explicit. It talked about fraud. It made certain very strong allegations, and they're now going through them, and they're inviting. I saw there was a clarification that nobody has been summoned, not even the current Minister of Tourism, Hamad N.K. Bar. He's been invited to answer questions from the committee. But Mr. Mboj, what we have seen, the level of scrutiny, and I know you are very much in support of this, the kind of reform, the kind of something that has teeth, that is questioning people and questioning them hard. Very much what we need right now.
But this is it, because we you know, when we talk about we need institutional reform, what are we talking about?
Yes, quite.
That it's not in good shape. You know, it's not in a good nick. And we know, especially recently, everything has been sort of becoming really clear. Sure. If it wasn't clear before, it's much clearer. We've seen all these institutions, the local government, local councils, the area councils. We've seen the laxity, as it were, in the management and oversight, and we've seen it all over the place. Gum Petroleum, as it were. So we're seeing these things all over the place. But here, it's the staff that have taken it.
That's right.
That's very
right.
Interesting.
That's right.
To the public petition, isn't it? They
that's
have
right.
something like that.
It's called the Standing
Committee for Public Petitions.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then, why should we be surprised that all these mismanagement, as it were, and all of these things that we shouldn't be doing, that we are doing? This is really the gravity of the problem. Sure. We thank God now the select committees, the standing committees, and actually, they're doing something about it. So we'll see how it goes. But with this one, it was quite interesting. Yeah. They said everything changed when Hamad Bar came in.
That's right.
And then what he said, why he wanted to have GT board to have another office, because apparently they had agreed that where Tropic is, the shopping center.
Near to Senegambia, if anybody knows it.
And that sort of thing.
Sure.
But then he said, no, apparently, this is what Hamad Bar said, that no, the offices shouldn't be
in a shopping center.
In a shopping center.
Yes.
I'm not sure about that. On the basis of that, he extended the lease.
That's right, because certain adjustments were made to the original contract. So from 30 years became 35 years.
Yes.
And eventually
50.
50.
We went on to 50.
So, exactly.
Because they had to build
an underground car park.
Yeah, that was it. But for Hamad Bar, the extension
and
to 50, they had to build the other office. They had to build the
That's
other
right.
office. And there was a market as well.
That's right,
that was all
market.
part of it.
Craft market.
So it's important that we get to the bottom of this. We'll see what happens. Maybe sooner or later, Hamad Bar would appear before them.
Well, that's right.
And
of course, if it's next week, we will probably come and address it on this program, because we've had the CEO or chairman of Construct Limited, which is the company that won the contract, and he came and he's given some eye-opening testimony, and of course he justifies it, says he still thinks it's a win-win for both government and for the private sector.
That's it, but of course one of the allegations was that, wasn't it, when they said it was Hamad Bar who gave Construct Limited the contract.
That's right.
So perhaps one would also look into that. Should that have happened? What would happen?
That's
Even
right.
though I understand as well that they had been here before.
That's right.
It's only with the change of government.
That's right.
You know, when he came in because of what he wanted to change the office and that sort of thing.
That's when.
That's when, yes. So I am not sure about the contract, but it was Hamad Bar who gave it to them.
And that's what we want clarity on.
We need clarity on certain things. Then we see what's going on.
Sure.
And this is what we need to do with all our public institutions.
Absolutely. So they've started well. Let's hope they continue in that way. And talking about starting well. If you look across a map of Africa, you'll have Guinea, you'll have Burkina Faso, you'll have Mali. You could actually draw a line through them. What's the connection? They've all had a coup d'etat recently. What's happening in West Africa? Anyway, what's happening in Burkina? Have a look.
Saturday, a band rally to protest the government's perceived failure led to dozens of arrests. Similar troubles in neighboring Mali led to a military coup in May 2021, one that was broadly welcomed by the public. In Burkina Faso, mutinying soldiers made several demands, including the removal of the army chiefs of staff and the head of the intelligence service, more troops to be deployed to the front line, and better conditions for the wounded and soldiers' families. On Sunday, Defense Minister General Bafilemi Simpore downplayed previous rumors of the president's capture and the nature of the unrest at large. State television, meanwhile, had characterized the sound of the gunfire at military barracks as the actions of a few disgruntled soldiers rather than a widespread fight or coup attempt. In a statement issued by the ECOWAS Commission, the West African bloc ECOWAS on Sunday expressed support for the Burkinabe government and called on the military to respect the country's legitimate authority. Similar pleas in Guinea and Mali fell on deaf ears. Reporting for QTV News, I am Aliou Cisse.
Similar pleas in Guinea and Mali, respect the constitution, all that stuff that we normally get from ECOWAS. Mr. Mboji, I don't know whether on Friday you listened to the first speech by the new coup leader. I wish I'd remembered his name, sorry.
Is it Paul Henri? Is it
yes,
Paul
Henri.
Is it
Damiba, I think.
Yes, Damiba.
Damiba, yes,
Exactly.
Paul Henri Damiba. It was remarkable speech in the sense that it could have been written by Yahya Jammeh in 1994. He was making the same allegations as Yahya Jammeh did all those years ago. And this led me to thinking, is this guy one day going to entrench himself in spite of all he said? Because he ended by saying, we will return to civilian rule as soon as is sensible and possible. I thought, oh dear, what an open door. Samboj, we've heard this all before.
Same. When the conditions are right.
Yes.
whatever that might mean.
It's quite.
Yes, and ECOWAS will condemn, will do all sorts, but it will fall on deaf ears.
Sure.
One analyst said that, hey, look, the political system called democracy is not working in many ways. You see, you will allow people to go and vote, and perhaps many times you rig it.
Sure.
Our livelihoods, our lives, nothing is improving. We'll have a free press. You keep on talking about whatever. You're not having any effect on behavior, as it were, on governance, it seems.
Yes.
So, in fact, that analysis I read, they interviewed some people in Burkina Faso, in Mali, all over. They said, hey, look, we're just tired of democracy. So this is the fear now. And you know that coups are contagious. Now that you've seen how it's...
Yes, and what, for me what was interesting is there was a piece in The Economist, this esteemed publication, this very week. And it was about this. It said Putin, but specifically Xi Jinping, when he is reconfirmed at the Communist Party sessions in October of 2022, he and China will use it as a way of demonstrating that Western-style democracy, much vaunted, is not working. And they will point to the failings of things like the recent American election. They'll point to things like Brexit. They'll point to things like the way the EU is undecided about whether to intervene in the Ukraine. And he and China will point to the economic gains that China has made, the change in people's lives economically and socially that have happened in the China, and say, look, this model works. It doesn't always have to be Western-style democracy.
That is exactly
and essentially this is the fear of all these coups succeeding in our region, because they can also point to China and say, look, that's not a democracy, Western-style democracy, or any kind of democracy in the sense that we know it, but seems to be working.
That's it. There's a new model. It's a new kid, new kid on the
And of
block.
course, Russia is
and
is
then
one
Russia
that
is right there.
sort of pretends to
So
be
this is
democratic
it.
as well.
You see this youth bulge, as it were, when they look at the world as it is. You might think that perhaps the Chinese model, we do not know how it's going to pan out. Everybody thought, especially us in Gambia during the Soviet Union, everybody thought that it was strong. I remember in the 80s, you know, the more radical people were more Soviet sympathizers.
Some of my cousins who studied in Russia up to this day still are, I hasten to add, yes.
Absolutely.
Up to
so
this day.
when it unraveled in 1989-90, everybody was taken by surprise.
It was a shock, yeah.
So now I'm cautious about China. Right now we've seen this unbelievable expansion, this growth.
That's right.
But yet they want to do it under conditions of dictatorship, essentially.
Yeah.
You see, Amartya Sen touched on this, the Nobel Prize winner in 1998. You see, you don't need freedoms, democracy, really to have economic growth, as it were. I mean, the contribution is about 1 or 2%.
Quite.
What you need democracy for is economic security.
Sure.
That's a longer term thing. That is why most of these dictatorships, in the longer term, you have to adapt or stop. Something will happen.
Yeah, quite.
This is really what the key is.
Yeah.
Because, you know, as you get more middle class, educated, you know, have lots of money, they will need security. So the pressure to introduce democracy will come but later.
That's right.
But when you look at our situation now, we cannot grow anything. This is it. Democracy and growth, no, it's not true. As the studies, you know, what we said, it is not true. It's not there. That's why dictatorships tend to have this. Look at China, for instance.
Exactly.
So this is the dilemma.
Sure.
We want democracy, well, you're going to have slow growth.
Well, this is it, because, you know, democracy, you know, people will say, you know, democracy, is that going to fill my stomach? You know, what I want is something and somebody who can give me security, safety, grow the economy, etc., etc. Why does it have to be democratic?
Little wonder that in the West, democracy came towards the end.
Exactly.
Let's be honest. When you look at women, 1928 or something, with all of them, look at the U.S., black people, well, in the 1960s or something, moving on. Democracy came towards the end.
Absolutely.
At the height of their power, the height of their wealth, when you take the Edwardian age in Britain, just before the First World War, they tell you that they were so rich.
Exactly.
That
and
was
they
no
didn't have
democracy, really, what we call
Quite.
democracy today.
Sure.
So let us revisit these concepts. You know, some will say that maybe it doesn't depend on the type of government, but the nature of it.
Indeed.
Granted, but so far what we've seen historically, I'm not sure now.
Yeah, quite. It's one to ponder. And one to ponder as we go for a break. So join us after this break. Don't go away.
Now, with Ajib Bank, you can make your vehicle number plate payments without any hassle. Walk into any of our bank branches or agencies located at Banjul, New Joswang, Karaba Avenue, Bakote, Tranquil Brusubi, Brikama, Basse, Farafenye, Numuyel or Garawal. Your number plate payments now made easy with Ajib Bank. For more information, please call us on 422-8405 or 377-5811. Ajib Bank, your investment partner.
I am the light goddess. Everything I touch turns into light. I am the light at the end of the tunnel, and my technology is the answer. I am the happiness in your life. I keep you connected, and I am Q-Power. I am Q-Cell. I am Sunibus. We innovate, others follow. Call 111 for more information.
Hello and welcome back. You're watching QTV and you are watching The Week in Review. And if you're just joining us, you've missed 5 stories, and you know I'm not lying, we've still got 5 cracking stories to go, and I have my colleague, Mr. Mboj, to go through them with me. So thanks again. Now, Mr. Mboj, people know I relocated from the United Kingdom, but I grew up in this region. My father was born here in the Gambia. But since the book Roots came out and the mini-series, lots of Americans who'd never heard of Gambia suddenly heard about the Gambia. And more recently, some have started moving here. Have a look.
Imported ones.
We were very fortunate to be able to buy a large plot of land here in the Gambia where we could grow our own food, grow what we eat, and eat what we grow. One of the things that we kept noticing was every time we buy a consumable or a good or something, it was imported. Yes. And so we said, wow, you know, that's an opportunity right there to grow it in country and to add the value on and then distribute it to the population. So that would again create jobs. We don't just come in and look at profit. We're looking at disseminating the information and
not just looking at profit, and again, not just coming on a holiday. You know, just today, before we came here, I was speaking to a friend who says he's visited the Gambia 15 times, and he was asking me to be honest about what it was about living here, and I gave him an honest view. I didn't sugarcoat it. I said, your 15 visits, the longest which was 2 weeks, that wouldn't prepare you for living here. There are certain realities you have to face. But the couple, Usumburas, have settled here now for about 3-4 years. I think they came just before I did, and I follow them on YouTube. They have a YouTube channel, Black Acres of the Gambia. But Mr. Mboj, there are more of them. I've met lots of people from Jamaica and other parts of the Caribbean who have chosen to settle, and we got a flavor there that they're not just coming on holiday. They want to come, they want to settle, and they want to contribute.
Absolutely, and apparently I understand that they've got about 50,000 subscribers.
Yeah, indeed.
Indeed.
As I said, I'm one of them, yes.
Yes, we've talked about this sort of thing. We've been in this terrain so many times. Of course, we welcome them and just look at this eco-friendly lifestyle.
Well, indeed, indeed.
You know what I mean? It will rub off on people, and you know that when you have this mixture of different ideas and stuff, different peoples. Even if you want to put it that way, it makes the whole structure dynamic. I love these people coming over. And that. So obviously, we've had, I understand, in the whole of Africa, you've got about 50,000 African Americans.
That's right.
I'm not sure how many.
That figure was from 2014.
2014. Can you imagine now?
It's grown since then, and certainly when Ghana in 2019 did Year of Return, initially 126 African Americans were given citizenship, but since then many more have actually gone to places like, including Sierra Leone, so Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and of course the Gambia.
Absolutely. So that said, some of them would invest, employ people.
Indeed,
so they will do all sorts of things. Sure. And overall, the overall cultural effect, as it were,
right.
I think that would be enriching.
Well, this is it.
Yes,
I mean, you know, and I said to a friend of mine who is from Trinidad, Kent, I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning this, he's planning on moving this year. And he's come to the Gambia 6 or 7 times. And what he wants to do when he's in the Gambia is, he said he was driven around, and he wanted to be driven around more than just Greater Banjul. And he said one of the things that struck him, first of all, the peanuts, that so many groundnuts, and yet you can go to the shops and buy imported peanut butter in jars by the score. You can buy imported peanuts, salted peanuts, which is one of my favorite snacks. He said it should not happen. But the thing that really struck him was the amount of wasted cashews, where the fleshy part of the fruit part of the thing, the nut was roasted and so on a small scale. He said if you juice that, you could employ 30, 40 people in just one. So he's actually coming to build something like that. You know, he wants to move here, and that's part of what so we have a lot of people, and a lot of them are coming with very, very positive attitudes.
Fantastic. The mindset, that is why often I like to hear sort of the assessment of a foreigner. I want them to assess me. When you look at my lifestyle, what we do, what is your assessment? It's good to get these judgments as well, because it puts things in perspective, and I think that is very enriching as well. I like that. So this is it. They might come here and see the way we live, and they identify certain areas in which they can invest and, you know, change the whole sector, as it were, make it more productive, and we will benefit from that. So it is important that we have these people who think in that entrepreneurial way as well. That is what we want. And you come, you succeed, you pay your taxes, you are honest and loyal to this country. Why not?
Not a problem. Quite exactly. Why not? So, the more the merrier. That's what I'm saying. Some people are not, but that's what I'm saying. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. And now, recently, International Day of Education was commemorated, as it implies international. So it was a global matter, but education has had certain problems and challenges to deal with recently, including, as you'll find out when you have a look at this.
COVID-19 has affected the education sector, causing schools to close last year and lost contact hours. Claudiana A. Cole, Minister of Basic and Secondary Education, explains how the ministry hopes to strengthen the education sector.
To make sure that we provide the school access to education must be made available, and that is by providing the schools. And you need to know, or you already know, that we have been constructing a lot of schools with the help of MRC Holland, constructing a lot of schools recently, and refurbishing classrooms, and even providing more classrooms in large schools where the enrollment has increased.
Claudiana Cole there, refurbishing classrooms, refurbishing schools, building schools with MRC Holland, who we featured many times on QTV News. Mr. Mboj, it goes wider than that. COVID-19 brought a halt to education, and we just heard, again, we did Uganda, where children are out of school for 2 years, and some of them are not intending to go back. So COVID-19 really, really damaged education, and so we're being told to focus now on this International Day of Education and think about the importance of education and how it can contribute to peace and development.
Absolutely, and in our neck of the woods, it was just unbelievable. It was devastating, wasn't it? Because a lot of people do not have the technology, perhaps in other societies, because of structurally things are much it's a premium than over here. So obviously, so what do we do next? How do we recover from that? How do we compensate for lost time? I think they've been trying to do that, but for International Day of Education, obviously. But what they talk about, build back better. Maybe that is really what the focus is. Well, that's what the focus should be, really. So when something similar comes along next time, we know that it's a technology now. How do we make all our schools, our children, expose them to this technology? It's very curious, and even perhaps it is on this day, that International Day of Education, if you like, that's when we really ought to think wider, because that will determine what reforms I will introduce. What is education for? Because for me, recently I've been very worried here. We tend to think that education is seeking skills for jobs.
Yes, quite.
Granted, of course, entrepreneurial skills, having letters after your name, and that sort of thing. But that would be really a superficial conception of education. Of course, I need the job sort of to earn my keep. But in many ways, that is secondary to the primary function of education, to be quite honest. Education makes me a human being.
A good point to end on that one. Education makes one a human being. I agree with you on that. I agree with you on that. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. We got 3 more stories. Now, Malawi's president recently dissolved and then his cabinet, and then reappointed a new cabinet. And in some quarters, there was a lot of praise for him, but not everybody was singing and dancing from the rooftops. Have a look.
The investigation does not appear to have addressed allegations involving the president, especially claims of nepotism.
And I was one of those who was being very cynical about the president because, as was said there by our colleague, Mr. Esonyasi, the president didn't address claims of nepotism that were directed at him, and including the fact that he took his wife and his daughter on a trip to London for what was meant to be a virtual conference, and his daughter has now been appointed as a senior official at the Malawi High Commission in London. So yes, talk is cheap.
Yes.
He's cracking down on corruption, nepotism, the very things he accused his predecessor of doing.
Absolutely, and I was beginning to warm to him, if you know what I mean.
We all
because
were.
yes, because he'd given some interesting speeches where he was asking his people to really look back at themselves.
That's right. Yes.
So I hope,
don't expect everything to be delivered by
yes, I hope
government.
he also did with himself, or granted. But this is it. Where would it go? Yes, you sack these people, you bring in others. But these are the sort of signs that I see to say that a president, a leader, is serious and he knows really what the problem is.
And the criticism is that, in fact, 2 days after dissolving them and so on, some of the ones he had sacked, he has reappointed.
Yes.
And so already he's losing kind of brownie points because they're like, oh, we thought you sacked them because there were investigations against these people, but you brought them back.
But I have to say this. During our elections, and I saw all these people going, wanting to be presidents. I'm like, God, do you know what you want to let yourself in for? There is a whole culture of doing things, doing business that really we must change it from the root, as it were.
Sure.
So it's going to be extremely difficult for everybody. Just look at post-independence. The presidents we thought, we knew that they were actually honest, good people. Yet the systems, a lot of things failed.
This is it.
The corruption was rife.
Yeah, quite.
Even though they personally, we say that about Jawara after he left, there was nothing.
Quite.
Yet there were others who were corrupt. So how do you deal with this? It's a whole culture
exactly.
of what it means to be in government.
Sure.
It's extremely difficult, I think.
Yeah, right.
It's extremely difficult.
Indeed, it's difficult. And so, yes, when you go up to be president, be careful. It's not as easy as it looks. Thank you for that, Mr. Mboj. We've got 2 more stories, and as they keep telling me, 6 minutes. And now onto social media. Some people are actually looking at social media as a career. Yes, a career, really. Have a look.
Here, I always would look for people who are like me, a teenager living in a place in Africa, and I never saw that. So that's what really inspired me to make the YouTube channel. You know, I'm living in a country in Africa, and it's not what you see on TV. It's much more to that. That is what is pushing me to keep doing my channel, to show people that Africa is so much more than what you just see on TV.
Ricky's
said there, you know, Africa is more than what you see on TV. I was part of a Zoom conference yesterday, which was about 3 days ago, which was looking at various aspects of the Gambia and broadcasting and media and so on, you know, use of telephones. And, you know, I threw some statistics which seemed to take them by surprise. The fact that, you know, Gambia has one of the highest rates of, you know, mobile phones per head of population in the world. Had more than 430 people who are on social media in the Gambia. Small country, that's quite big. So potentially one can make a career of social media by being here in the Gambia.
Absolutely, I heard 17.5% of the total population. Of course, one can, I mean, every innovation comes with opportunities,
Indeed,
particularly commercial opportunities.
And because it's online, it means you're not just broadcasting the Gambia.
Yep.
If you have a YouTube channel,
Absolutely.
anybody, anywhere in the world can see it.
Absolutely.
So
And what she said there, I like that. Maybe she would go around and look at interesting things.
Well, this is it.
You know,
Yes.
and go and publish, not just the usual sensational
Stuff
rubbish,
about Africa.
Stuff about Africa.
Yeah,
so this is the wonderful thing. I wish more people had, you know, would take this up.
Correct.
And, you know, just depending on what you want to do. But
So yeah, so if young people are watching, think again. If you were thinking of a career, this might be one if you're good enough. So yeah, thanks, Mr. Mboj. And now on to our final story, animal welfare laws. Yes, we have them. And again, some of them are colonial era laws. People are thinking about changing them. Have a look.
That is up to a decade. there is need for it to be changed. There is need for it to either be amended or there is a need for it to be repealed. It is just ideal that after every 10 years, laws that have been passed should be revisited either for amendments or possible repeals.
Dr. Usman.
Horse and Donkey Trust organized that one with various stakeholders. I've told my staff to stop saying relevant stakeholders, just stakeholders will do. Mr. Mboj, really, you and I know that, you know, animal welfare laws, we have some on the books, but they're disregarded, like many other things. But I like what was said there about we should look at them every 10 years or so, you know, review them, repeal them, and so on. But most crucially, enforce them. Surely, that's always the problem.
Yes, was it Jefferson who said that really even with constitutions every 25 years you need to change. Yeah, humans are always changing and moving on. Yeah, so apparently this law, this 1938 animal welfare law, it's been there for
the act, yes,
the act, as it
needs
were,
to be looked at, needs to be changed, because we see how animals are treated and mistreated. And of course, if there were laws that were enforced, that sort of treatment would not go on.
That's it. You see people with donkey and carts.
Yeah, quite.
You know, they're a regular
Exactly.
feature in our roads and the like. And you see, we've had this very curious relationship with animals, isn't it? I mean, the cattle herder would obviously respect your
it's their
cattle.
livelihood.
It's their livelihood and stuff. The people who use these donkeys and carts, you should be kinder to them, find more creative ways of
getting them to move on.
The one I feel sorry for is the dog.
Well, indeed.
Even the way we say it, when we call you hutch, it's really something despicable.
Quite.
So when we were growing up, I'm so embarrassed. We would never see a dog without picking up a stone to stone them.
Hands up, me too, Mr. Mboj. I think we better end on that point before we get hauled before the authorities. But thank you for your intervention so far. And to the viewers, I always say thank you for watching. And until the next time, it's goodbye from us.